Hey everybody, welcome to Old Fashioned Catholics. I'm Nick. Kevin is not here tonight, so this is a first. We have no Kevin tonight, and so I changed the title of the event. The episode is now John Hale and Life Without Kevin. Kevin will be back, I'm sure, at some point, but we always knew this would happen at some, you guys have no idea how many episodes we have canceled and not recorded just because one of us had a crying child or a crying wife, or who knows, it could be, or both. So tonight, Kevin is unable to be with us. And so because it can be a little difficult to get this guy, and because I have a little bit of rapport with him, and so it shouldn't be horribly painful to watch this episode, I decided to go forward with it. And so we'll skip the beginning, except for if you happen to be joining us for the first time. Old Fashioned Catholics is just usually Kevin and I interviewing somebody or just talking to each other, Catholic dads talking about Catholic life, being married. You don't have to ingest alcohol to watch the show. We have found that our show is best enjoyed with some sort of drink in your hand, but you don't have to. Tonight we aren't even going to put our drink up on the screen. Tonight I am just drinking Kettle One vodka with a few olives thrown in and just ice. I didn't even have vermouth, so I can't make a proper martini. I could do like Bill Murray says and just say vermouth over it, and that's good enough for his type of martini. I think it was Churchill who said he liked his martinis with vodka, and then you have vermouth, an open bottle of vermouth across the room in front of a window, something like that. Anyway, so that's my drink tonight. But I wanted to welcome to the show. This is John Hale. He is the president of Corporate Travel Services in Michigan, and you'll find out all about him during the episode. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nick. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
It's good to have you. So before we go into how we met and everything like that, we only have two scripted questions that we ask, and then everything else is free form. So the episodes can sometimes get very long and sometimes very short if the interviewer is alone and boring. But the first question that we always ask is, what are you drinking today?
I've got some Glenlivet here, and I've got a nice glass. This is from Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island, Michigan, where we will be visiting Nick in just about 4 weeks.
Yeah, something like that.
So cheers.
Glenlivet is good. And the only other scripted question we ask, and that kind of kicks it off, and we have asked everybody openly, honestly, without reservation, as honest as you can be, how was your day today?
How was my day? I had a good day. I had a great day. So we have 5 children who are 15 to 23, and all 5 of them came home and celebrated Mother's Day with us.
Oh, nice.
And our second son is traveling with some friends for a few days, but the rest are here for this week. And so any day when our kids are home, I tell you, it's a great day. So I had a great day, Nick. How about you?
My day was good. We're in the same boat as every week. We're just selling our stuff off a piece at a time. Right before we started, I got a Facebook message that somebody wants our couch, and I'm like, yes, I wanted to get rid of that couch. So you have 5 children. Do they all spread to the wind, or are they all nearby? Or
so we have 2 in high school who are here at home. Andrew is our youngest. He's at the University of Detroit Jesuit High School. And we have Anna, who is a junior at Father Gabriel Richard Catholic High School in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And then we actually have 3 at the University of Notre Dame. We have a freshman, a junior, and a first-year law student, John, our oldest.
That's crazy. 3 at Notre Dame.
Yes.
That's interesting. So you must like the school or something.
Well, you know what? You like it more and more. Every check you sign. I went to the University of Michigan, but it's a little easier to like as you support the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, they have a football team, right?
They do. I've got a question though. Okay. So do you have to be old to be on Old Fashioned Catholic? Is that why I was invited?
Yeah. Yep. Kevin and I are like the lowest end of old. So I just turned 44. So I guess we're about close. But I start feeling it. Kevin's still kind of a youngster. He's quite a few years behind me. Shoot, now I don't remember exactly how old he is, but we're old. We're especially
you're young. That's young.
Kevin's a youngster. He's a little boy. In fact, he's probably got a passy, and that's why he skipped the episode tonight. But no, it's so funny. Way back, we I can't remember all the titles. We had bounced around a bunch of titles for the show, and just I think that was at the time. That's all I drank. That's pretty much all I drink anyway. Just once in a while, I really miss vodka, and so I'll do that. But yeah, I think that was kind of our theme. And then we thought, well, if you get people Googling or YouTubing and they see old fashioned Catholics, you'll get maybe the crew who's like, oh, I am an old fashioned. I like this newfangled Catholicism. We might get some of them, and then anybody who drinks, then they would know as well. So,
well, my kids asked, they were like, what are you on tonight? And I said, old fashioned Catholic. And they said, well, that's pretty fitting. They thought that the guest had to be old. So I thought, yeah, that's why I'm here.
That's disrespecting their elders. I guess that makes you an elder, which makes you old. So that's true. Yeah, we're back to that.
It's all fitting. It's fitting.
So I wanted to ask, when it comes to, so as I mentioned for you guys listening, John is the president of corporate travel. So when it comes to corporate travel, how did that all start way back? Were you always in travel agency? Like where did that start out?
So my father-in-law, my wife's father, was a teacher, and he started organizing travel for his students in 1965. Okay. So the company was founded 57 years ago. And I had lunch today, actually, with my father-in-law. He's a great man, very close with my in-laws, and just an amazing man. We could have a whole show on my father-in-law. But I actually practiced law for 8 years, but had studied international law overseas in London and had traveled extensively. I love to travel. And when I was maybe my first few years practicing, I was on the alumni board for my law school, and they asked if I would organize some travel as a function of the alumni board, which I did sort of, in all my spare time in the evenings. And the first trip we organized was to London, and it went very well. I've really never been all that interested in things, but really loved and kind of a junkie for experiences.
Sure.
And we just, everybody I would ask to set up this really cool trip for lawyers and for the law school, everybody said yes. And we just had this really cool trip. And after that first trip, the law school said, oh, how about you do another one? And I said, well, that's just sort of for fun. And my father-in-law also said, well, would you consider joining the company? At the same time, my brother-in-law is a CPA, and he was at a Deloitte & Touche at the time. And he said, basically, my father-in-law invited both of us to join the company. And within a year or so, we stuck our toe in, we tried, and off and running. And then we purchased the company in 2008 and just started growing. So when I started, my father-in-law said, I have this idea to organize music travel. And that's what I was brought on to start. And it was kind of a continuation of something he had started. But when we were working for some of the choirs that we were organizing travel for, they would be, a couple of them were liturgical choirs, and a priest would come. And so it was sort of automatically a pilgrimage. And I realized that we have to take this seriously. If this is a pilgrimage, you have to really know what you're doing. And so we have to have, Catholic guides and people and experiences that are going to, deepen people's faith and not take them away, because you go to Rome and you get the wrong guide, which is actually most guides, unfortunately, in Rome. And, it'd be kind of like a roll of the eye, legend has it, or, these sort of innuendos or worse. And I said, you know what, we're either going to do this or we're not. And we did it. And by God's grace, this division of pilgrimage kind of grew. Our performance division grew. And that was, 20 plus years ago.
So I think I remember somebody, if not you, somebody at one point saying like you handle like the travel for like the Vatican Choir and stuff like that, or is that true?
Yes. Well, we when the Sistine Chapel Choir, the Pope's choir, wanted to come to the United States, we contracted to become their agents, and we did a 3-city tour. It was very cool. It was really fun, and it was great privilege, great honor, and a very successful, I think, a great evangelization moment, because the concerts all sold out, and a number of them were free, but they were packed. And because it was also a cultural experience, it brought a lot of people who were interested in culture, but I think had a profound experience of the divine. And then about a year or so later, you may remember that the Met Gala featured the Papal Choir, and
Okay.
we were asked to organize that. And it's a very long story, but it was really cool. So there we were at the Met Gala and having all kinds of crazy
No way.
experiences. Yeah. So a lot of
That's
behind the story
great.
there. Yeah. Did you remember that? It was an exhibit called Heavenly Bodies. You know what the Met Gala is? I did.
I know what the Met Gala is, but I
Okay.
don't. What year would that have been?
2018. So
Oh, okay.
we had
Okay.
the U.S. tour in 2017, and my wife and I love New York. We love the Met, and they called. Someone from the Met called me and said they were interested in the choir, and we were going to New York anyway, coming. And I said, "Oh, that's great. That'd be awesome." And then when they called, they said, "No, we're interested in an event for next year." I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm not bringing them back. I mean, this was a lot of work."
Sure.
And they kept pushing and pushing, and finally, someone from the office of Anna Wintour, who's like the chair of it. I didn't know who she was. Calls, and they kept pushing, and finally they like disclosed what it was for. And I'm like, oh gosh, I don't think Papal Choir has any business being there. But
Sure.
as I thought about it, I mean, I have a fiduciary duty to bring whatever opportunities presented to us,
Sure.
ferret it out a bit. I brought it to the choir, a lot of back and forth, Nick, over the course of probably 6 or 7 months. And eventually, the Vatican approved it. And at the time that the choir appeared, there was a lot of controversy, which I think is sad, because it was an enormous evangelizing moment for evangelization. And, I was there, and the producers of the event said it was the first time in the history of the Met Gala that the audience was quiet for a performance. And I'm talking, through Elton John, through Madonna, through all these performers, they were only quiet for the divine. And there was such a strange dynamic, because people arrive on the red carpet, and we know what that looks like at any event. It's me, 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 me. And as soon as they got in, I noticed this tremendous shift in the dynamic. All these people, Rihanna, you name it, they wanted pictures and selfie with the choir. It was a total, it was this total reversal. And, who knows what seeds may or may not have been planted, but they experienced something of beauty and something of the divine that transcended kind of that self-focus that we all are tempted to. And I think certainly, people who are in prominent positions are particularly susceptible to. And I just thought it was a fantastic moment for the church, because we didn't have to alter our message or who we were to be present. And the folks were very respectful of the organizers. I felt that they were incredible. And yet we could, as a Catholic choir and organizers of that event, propose and put forth the divine to a crowd that may have never had before or since that experience. So anyway, I thought it was a really cool moment.
Well, first of all, that's crazy. Just I would love. I'm sure somewhere out there, is there any sort of like video documentation of that, like that silence? Is there any sort of?
Yes. You couldn't film or take any pictures in there.
Oh, okay.
But when you come in June, I may just have a few pictures on my phone.
We won't tell anybody.
Yeah, beyond this
all.
podcast, right?
No, I won't. Okay. I won't copy it and air it. Well, that's the other thing, though. Like, just I would guess that the content that they sang, that they performed, was completely of a divine nature.
Yeah.
Like, so again, like, I don't know how common that is at the Met Gala, that that a group would be there just singing the praises of God.
Never. I mean, never. That's not what happens there. And it was all sacred music. And again, that's amazing. I had a lot of conversations that night with a lot of people who, kind of in code language said, oh, I used to be Catholic, or not even that. What's the code? It's more like I grew up Catholic. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And then, you could have a nice discussion and say, well, St. Patrick's is right down Fifth Avenue, or this beauty you can experience, and even more deeply every week, every day. And we had a number of those kind of conversations.
Two things. One, what I can't remember the name of the Broadway the Catholic Church where all the Broadway people go to mass if they go to mass. Do you remember the name?
St. Malachi.
Yeah, St. Malachi. We were there
Yep.
once, and
Beautiful
again,
church.
just tourists, unaware of all that. My
Mhm.
sister and I went there, and well, actually, I think that was Jason and I at that time. But like that same concept of like here in the middle of just
Mhm.
performance on its own, void of humility, void of the content being for God, then it is me. I mean, that's the nature of it.
Yeah.
Even if you say you're an artist and you're trying to get something across, it's still just it's for me. I'm
Yeah.
there and I love the applause. So it's neat to, even when we were there, again, I didn't know if anybody there was famous at the time or if they were known. A friend of mine who was with us, I think she did recognize somebody, but like just that idea that here in the midst of that is
Yeah.
this little church where you can humble yourself and be like, and I love the fact that you would say that, just up the street you got St. Patrick's.
Oh yeah.
um the other thing is just that the prevalence of that conversation, again, I've only been Catholic since 2008, but the amount of times I've gotten on an airplane and get sit down between two people I don't know, and with the four wheels up, we're already talking, they're
Yeah.
already divulging, they're already pouring out their heart. And how many times somebody will say, I was born Catholic, or I was raised Catholic, or I was fallen away Catholic, or I'm a recovering Catholic, those
Mhm.
sort of things.
Mhm.
It's so common. Do you find that, in your world? You travel a lot. Do you find that in your life?
Oh, I do, absolutely. And it's funny because often on planes,
Yeah.
very often, the discussion comes up. But what's been the most surprising for our work is that I sort of made an assumption subconsciously early on that if someone's going to commit the resources of financial resources and resources of their time to a pilgrimage, a conference, a retreat, probably are pretty far along in your faith. You would
Mhm.
think. What's been shocking, Nick, is how many people find themselves on pilgrimage unaware, and they don't really even know
Really?
how they're there. And if I had to guess, I'd say 50% are solid. They're all in. They're just like us, battling our own sin, our own weakness, our own everything every day, but they're all in. And then, that next 25 or 30% are questioning, hope that, they're somewhere in a little bit of a struggle. But it's
Hmm.
that last part, that last bit of folks who are totally away from the church, have no idea how they got there, or are there very reluctantly. I just had in the Holy Land a group days ago, and one of the testimonials was a man who said, I thought this was a bunch of baloney. I was coming from my wife only, and had a profound conversion. And that happens almost every pilgrimage that we do.
Really?
All God's work, all God's grace. And it's really humbling to be part of that, Nick. And it's extraordinary. I remember several years ago, I was in Rome with a very big pilgrimage we were doing with Father Frank Pavone, Steve Ray, Teresa Tamio, and it was in association with a International Day of Life, and there was a papal mass. I just happened to be there, so I went to one of the dinners. We had like 300 people there, and I literally just picked a table, sat down, and nobody at the table knew I was associated with the pilgrimage. And I asked the gentleman next to me, probably in his 70s, how was your day? He looked very sober, and he said, well, it was the best day of my life. I said, oh, really? How so? He said, well, it's the first time I've been to confession and received the Eucharist in over 40 years. What?
Sheesh.
Like, how did you get here? And he said his wife's dying wish was that he returned to the church. No, her dying wish wasn't that he returned to the church, but that he go on pilgrimage. And he was like, what even is a pilgrimage? Like, he's
Right.
so disconnected. And he heard on Catholic radio, and he just thought, well, this must be my wife speaking to me. I'm going to go. And he just started sobbing. And, here we are, a table of 10 people. And anyway, those sorts of things, again, all by God's grace, and they happen all the time. You'll see it'll happen in Mackinac Island.
Yeah, that's crazy. I want to go back to that. Okay, so for people who don't know, because I want to ask more about the pilgrimages, but will you explain because okay, so I should say the first time I met John, I was speaking in Ann Arbor at a Legatus chaplet, or what do you call it, meeting? Do you guys call them meetings?
Yeah.
Chapter
Yes. Yep.
meetings.
Monthly
Anyway,
meeting.
and he came up after and was like, hey, just got an idea if we could talk and talk to me about pilgrimages, which again, that COVID happened, and then we're leaving, and that didn't pan out. But what they do is just so exciting and so unique. So I did want you to talk about that because it's really cool.
Well, thanks. Well, first of all, I mean, Nick, I have to say it, and not because I'm on your show. Your talks just was one of the greatest talks. I really, there's something amazing. My wife and I agreed. We said, "Gosh, you're just a man with no guile. You just really, really moved us that night." So it was blessed, a blessed evening, an amazing talk, and just very humbled to know you and your wife. Your witness has
That's
been
the only compliment you
strong.
get. I'll kick you off the show if you. Okay, that's it.
Truly, but I mean it. I have to say it. Yeah. So we organize. We have the privilege to organize pilgrimage retreats, conferences, and events. And so we have invited you to come here to Michigan in just a few weeks. I guess I've alluded to it a few times now, and to be part of one of our annual events, which we do at Mackinac Island's Grand Hotel. And for those of your listeners who haven't been, or particularly, it's a great place for families. And check it out. Go on the website. It's one of the top hotels, and I think one of the top places in the country, if not the world, to go with your family, because it's, talk about old fashioned. I mean, it is traditional as traditional gets.
Yeah, you were saying there's no cars on the island, right?
No cars on Mackinac Island, only horses or bicycles, all Victorian, late 19th century. The hotel was built in 1887. It's updated. It's a beautiful hotel, but it's very traditional. You have to dress for dinner, suit and tie, or not suit.
I have one suit. I bought it for the Legata Summit. So actually, it's funny because when I spoke the first time in Ann Arbor, I made a comment. I made a joke. Hey, I appreciate being here. I only have 2 ties, so you can only ask me back one more time. And so then when they had me the second time, I was like, "This is it. This is it. That was it." And the Mackinac thing on the island, just so you guys know, I get to be with it's kind of an up and coming little upstarty type of priest named Father Mike Schmitz. He's going to be there as well. He's small on the poster, but he's going to be there. Yeah. So,
you'll carry him.
But okay.
Won't you carry him?
Yeah, I'll carry him. Sometimes he's really rough. He just hasn't slept. And so I'll take it. Okay. So the pilgrimages though, because there was, it was like a subset of what you do, but you would introduce me to, well, I won't say all the names, but you would introduce me to people who they have like a subset of the pilgrimages that you do. They're very unique. Can you explain those?
Remind me.
Well, Jean, and she had me. I was talking with her about going on. They're very unique in the sense of they're immersive. I don't know. They were called a certain name.
Yes, Engage pilgrimages. Was it
Engage?
Yes.
Yeah, it was like Extreme or Engage. I couldn't. That's right. I couldn't remember the name of it, but yeah. So
yeah. So we do. We're trying to reach the younger folks. The next kind of generation, to give them that transformative experience, because a lot of people who are younger are searching. They're looking. I mean, they might not have any connection now with church, with faith, with God at all. And I think that they're actually very open and a great generation to reach. And when they visit, Rome or the Holy Land, and they understand the context and the history and the proof, the historical proof of each of these places, they're blown away. It's just incredible. So we've worked for, the Leonine Forum, Father Roger Landry, Young Catholic Professionals, Jen Bao, which if any of your folks know of their work, first of all, either join or start a chapter wherever you are. Young Catholic Professionals is amazing. And then a number of our own pilgrimages that we organize for young people, families, young adults, and I'd say anywhere from right after college to early 30s.
Okay.
Is that Engaged product?
Yeah, pilgrimages. I've never been technically on a pilgrimage. I've never gone to World Youth Day or anything like that. Jason got to go to the one in Australia.
Oh.
But that's one of those things that obviously it wasn't God's timing. But it's one of those things that I wish it had been, because getting to, just when Jean was explaining the intricacies of it, and like I think at one point she was mentioning, I think it's in Italy, but like you're in the kitchen helping learn to cook the
Yes.
meals instead of like just coming in and like, they bring it all out and it's a normal, like a sort of a turnstile type thing. You get to go in the back and you get to learn, like just meet the guy and be with him. And I just think that's a cool approach, especially for you were mentioning young like Catholic professionals, people who, to be honest, so I grew up, very outside the realm of any money of any kind at all, very, very poor. And the first time I got asked to speak at a Legatus event, it's because somebody had asked Father Mike and he couldn't do it. And so he said it was the Pittsburgh chapter. And I got booked to speak at it. And I was incredibly, when they called, I was like, well, that I like I'm a missionary, right? And I don't have any money. And they're like, yeah. That's why I want you to come. What do you want me to speak on? And they were like, I want you to speak on stewardship. And I was like, okay, to reiterate, I don't have it. And they're like, that's why we want you to come. And
Wow.
speaking at the event in Pittsburgh was like the most humbling. It kind of bowled me over. I had never experienced that world where you see people who, again, not everybody's not perfect, but a realm where people who have been given so much have realized it. And so, for instance, our nonprofit is called Freely Given because, Matthew 10, freely you've received, freely give. It was the first time I had met people who had been given a crap ton in their life and had decided with it they were going to give that crap ton away. It was so humbling. So then the idea that these pilgrimages, that there are some of them that appeal to young Catholic professionals, people who they have been gifted, but they have an intense relationship with Christ. And how do you walk that line? That's a fine line that I had never seen before until I met people from Legatus who just, they're trying to walk it every single day. And so when Gene was telling me about those pilgrimages, I was like, man, I wish everybody knew that these existed, that these engage pilgrimages existed, because it's just super unique. I love that they exist.
Well, thanks so much for that, Nick. And we all are given gifts, and whatever we're given, we're asked to give back. And that's, I don't think it's foreign to you at all. I think that's exactly what you and Jacelyn and your family do and are doing. And with that particular product of Engage, there are a lot of opportunities to experience the faith by doing. So, like you said, we'll do pizza making. We might do. We go to one of the oldest gelaterias in Rome, and you make gelato, and then you serve it out front. Try to do things that you also are incorporating faith, not just someone talking at you, but actually, engaging. That's why they're called Engage.
Yeah, that's great. Those are those newer? Have they? I mean, how did those originate? Actually, how did that start?
Gosh, probably about 10 years ago, one of our clients who traveled quite a bit with us and was concerned about his grandkids not being in the faith. He said, you need to really look at what you can do to minister to families. And I said, gosh, I really thought about it. I prayed about it. And then, through our work for Legatus, for members of the Order of Malta and other folks who, as you said, were successful and very faith-filled, I found very often what they were most concerned about and what plagued them, if anything, was the fact that their kids or their grandkids might be away from the church. And I thought, well, gosh, who would turn down like a trip to Ireland or a trip to Rome? Like, you know what I mean? Right. Even if you're out of the church and you think grandma and grandpa are out to lunch, hey, I'm still going to go to Rome, right? So I thought, let's start organizing these things. Like, again, the Mackinac Island. And when they come, they're, they understand Catholicism, the universality, the way that we embrace all beauty, the beauty of geography, the beauty of architecture, of art, of food, of drink, but we don't pervert it. And it's just one aspect. But then during that time that we're together on pilgrimage, retreat, or conference, I think that they have the opportunity to see that we also have to nourish our spirit, and that we're spiritual beings, not just physical beings. And we don't want to, demean ourselves by only focusing on our physical humanity. It's we're all. And so that was sort of the genesis, and the philosophy behind it is how to lure um, folks to it, essentially, and then show them an incredible time uh, of joy and laughter. And, for instance, on some of these family trips, 1 minute we'll be in the pool, and, the dads will be beating the crap out of the boys, and, in the basketball game. And then, 3 or 4 hours later, you'll see those same dads and kids in a tie or a sport coat on their knees praying the rosary, and then at mass, and then an hour later having a nice cocktail, but nobody overdoing it, and then having a nice meal, and then we'll go and dance at the the hotel. You just see it all, and that's the beauty of life, and you see an integrated life. So
one of the things that has kind of impacted me that I've been mulling now since I guess it's 4 years ago when I went to Pittsburgh, something like that, but that I've been mulling around is just this idea, it's the famous God has not called us to be successful, but has called us to be faithful. But that, and that's great for most people, because it's like, oh, sweet, because I'm not, I'm not successful. But like, to those who have been called to both, that's a tough, what I have seen. And then, so I got to be the MC at the summit for Legatus in Scottsdale, Arizona in September. And
this year.
This
past year.
21. Yeah.
Oh, 21. How did I not know that?
Yeah. And it's a bummer, because it was great, because they were like, we'd like to have you back. And I was like, when? And they're like, 2 years from now. I was like, not going to happen. But that's beside the point. But staying up late, standing in the lobby, like closing down, like as the hotel people were shutting everything down, just staying up late with a few different people from the Legatus world, and having them express, like, in all humility and in all like sincerity, just, it's a tough line to walk when you're called to both, when you're called to be successful and faithful. And like that challenge of staying faithful in a world that says, okay, if you had to choose between success and faithfulness, you just choose success. It's a really hard line for those who are called to both. And it can be easy when you're like generally just called to faithfulness. It can be really hard to be like, to not understand that walk. But getting to stay up late and experience some of that with people has, again, put me in my place in such a deep way, to see people who are like, nope, I've been called to this road where, through no fault of my own, I have been granted and given success. How do I be utterly faithful to Christ? Like, how do I live abandonment when this is also the calling? And so it's been neat. That's why Legatus has changed my life, to be honest, time and again.
Yeah, ours too. Again, it's been for us an opportunity to shape and to form us as a couple, as a family, and then also, how to lead a business, because I was young when I started, and certainly not trained in business. I was trained and worked as a lawyer, so I had a lot to learn. I still have a lot to learn. I feel like I have more to learn now than when I started. I think God allows you to be blind to all that's going to be coming your way sometimes, so you just wade in with faith. And now as much as ever. But yeah, Legatus has been a great organization, and I'm glad they've blessed you, and I know you have blessed members of
all right, I have to boot you.
Okay, done. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye.
And he's out. So everybody, this has been a great night. It's been cool. I'm just kidding. You're back. I was gonna ask, to be on. So in transparency, then, is there anything that you don't like about the current business that you're in, but also, is there anything that you miss about practicing law?
Gosh, it's interesting, because my son, now I mentioned, is in law school, and he wants to talk about, just tonight we were talking about civil procedure, and we were talking about 2 or 3 cases, and he brought them up, and I said, oh, minimal contacts, that's how you get jurisdiction. And it is fun. I loved the study of law. I really enjoyed the practice. I never looked back. I really loved this career until the pandemic. And then I thought, why did I leave? What was I thinking?
I remember you saying that on the phone at one point.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
like, you doing okay? And you were like, well, yeah.
Sort of.
we're okay. We're doing okay.
If you think I had the gift of prophecy, here's the timeline. So I started in the company in 2000. We know what happened in 2001 with
Right.
the
Yeah.
travel. I bought the company, as I said, in 2008. I don't know if you remember that little crash that happened, like
I do.
08, 09. Yeah, so that was great timing. And we made our biggest investment in the company in 18 and 19, just
Awesome.
before the pandemic. Yeah, so
Nice.
whatever I do, you just do the opposite, and you're going to be
Yeah.
fine.
We're like two peas in a pod. We're both horrible with money.
Holy
Just
cow!
terrible decisions. That's crazy.
Yeah, but you know what? God's blessed it. It's been a tough. I think it's difficult to be in business at all right now. I know so many folks. I don't know what it is. It just feels like if you have to shut down the entire world for a year or two, it feels like a Model T. We're trying to hand crank a society in a world that is running on chips, and there's no way to restart that mechanically, physically, and everything feels like you're walking in quicksand. And I can't name all the dynamics. It's just a general feeling, and I would say at once I'm really blessed to be in this work, and at the same time, it's I feel often that it's just God's grace that kind of keeps me going, because it does feel at moments be too strong or dramatic, but there's a cross associated with this work right now, and a lot of challenges.
So did you grow up Catholic? Were you born and raised Catholic?
Yes, I was born and raised Catholic. I was born and raised in a small town on Lake Huron here in Michigan, Port Huron, Michigan. Okay. So I love the water. All things water, all things Port Huron. It's the other Holy Land, really, Nick.
Well, okay. It's okay to disagree. Although I will say, so one of my favorite artists of all time is Eminem, and he came from Detroit, 8 Mile. So
8 Mile would be very close.
Yeah, really. All right, so that's on my bucket list, actually. So
really,
we might have to, try
and make that happen.
Pretty influential. Okay, so you grew up that way. So I wanted to. I don't think I've asked in person, but I'll use Pentecostal terminology because I grew up in the Assemblies of God. And so from the very first conversation we had, I remember where I was standing. I remember you approaching me and talking, and you're just a very like charismatic, but not in like gregarious, but like charismatic in the religious terminology. Like you are a very, you use terminology a lot that sounds very Protestant, or I guess it sounds very evangelical or ex-evangelical. So I'd be interested to know any of your experiences when it comes to life in the Spirit, whatever that might mean for you, because it's very common in every single conversation or text that I've ever had with you, that's very prevalent. So I'd like to, if you are able to expound on that.
Yeah, I guess going back to my earliest memory of kind of the faith, of course, we went to Mass every Sunday, didn't matter where we were. Okay. Not that we traveled a lot, but even if we did travel, we always went to Mass. But, I don't know if you know this, but the 80s weren't the greatest time for catechesis in the church. I don't mean to surprise you or anything, but I went to a public school, so I went to what was called CCD, and again, it was very... not to really demean it, but I wish I had known or learned so much of what I've been able to learn through Catholic radio, through podcasts, through, reading. And we have so many resources today that's just incredible. But I will say in grade school, my godparents were extraordinarily Catholic, wonderful, wonderful people. And they, their children would babysit us. And so I probably fourth grade, they introduced me to the rosary. And
okay,
I didn't know what a rosary was. I mean, even though I went to catechism, and my gosh, I just learned the beauty of the rosary. And I thought, this is incredible. I absolutely loved it.
Okay, pause. So say more as a fourth grader then.
Yeah.
What, because me coming from outside, I love the rosary. I always have one, and we've been talking about how to pray it more, but I'll encounter people from the outside who have no clue, who maybe despise the rosary, but Catholics themselves who were like, I don't know. I do it. What as a fourth grader then? What would draw you, or yeah, what would encourage you towards the rosary?
It just has to be the Holy Spirit, Nick. I honestly don't know. I mean, I can't tell you. I have vivid memories of, just praying the rosary. Then they gave me a scapular, which I wear to this day. I don't think I've taken it off since like fourth grade. Not the same one, but
That's
um,
crazy.
I think what I did was I read the promises of Our Lady to those who prayed the rosary, and I thought, gosh, I want that. I want a holy death. Even though I was young, I thought this life is short. It's passing, and so I had from an early young age, I think, this sense of eternal, and yeah, just little by little, it was my life has just been this sort of like slow and steady build, and God putting incredible people in my lives in the most unobvious places, from undergraduate to law school to my first jobs. I mean, everywhere along the way, God has just blessed me with people, like amazing people who he must know how weak and fragile I am, because he just sort of like, here's someone great. Here's a witness. Here's a witness. And it's just.
What would you say? Again, it's tough to quantify. Sometimes I'll ask people the top thing, but out of the top, what would be one of the top pivotal moments where God has broken through all the weeds and all of the chaos and all the stupidity and just impacted you throughout your life? One of them. It doesn't have to be the greatest, unless you know the greatest.
Well, the one that like the most dramatic in my mind was the discernment to start with my father-in-law. That was not an easy decision. I loved my in-laws, and I didn't want anything to, come in the way of the family. And I think we were all concerned about that when you go into business together. And a lot of it was pride too. I mean, was doing very well as an attorney. I was at a large law firm. I was actually working for the Ford family, and loving the work. I mean, I was a very junior attorney, but I mean, doing very interesting work. I'll show you when you come to Detroit. They were building the stadiums downtown, and I was helping to acquire the land. Again, as a very junior attorney, just like learning.
Crazy.
And so to go from that, and you have to think back in the era of 2000. I mean, travel was on its way out. It was a dying industry because you had the internet, you had,
Sure.
And so a lot of it was like this pride. Like, how do you will people think I failed and couldn't do the law? Will they not, know? And that was, I think, my subconscious or conscious fear of making the move. And,
Right.
when I finally kind of got over myself, it was a particular moment, and I'll never forget it. I was in the backyard of our, modest first house, my wife and I, and it was no voice. It was not anything, but this is after 3 years, Nick. And in fact, I think I was like painting at one of the doors in the house outside. And I had the clearest sense that I was supposed to go and do this. I mean, it was just absolutely positively clear. I've never looked back once since. My father-in-law was in Greece with a group, and I called him and I said, I'm going to come work for you. And he was kind of taken by surprise because we hadn't even spoken about it for months. And he's like, you are? Well, great. Welcome aboard. I mean, it was so that, sticks out as one moment that was just amazing.
So in that moment, then you were aware that was the jump you were supposed to take.
Oh yeah. It was so clear. And I had no fears from then on, and I just did it. Yeah. All the 3 years of like, oh, what will people think, or this, or that, I'll just never look back.
Well, so it's crazy to me. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So for you, we're talking about it now, in 2022, and you can say that was 3 years. Can you believe it? It was 3 years, but that's 3 years of your life where you're deliberating something, where you're tossing something around. That's huge. And that's, for anybody who would listen, it's really encouraging to know it, like that when God calls you to something, he understands that you might deliberate. He understands that it might take you 3 years.
Yeah.
It'll
take what it'll take, and you've got to be patient. I've done a couple talks on the Holy Spirit, and I liken the Holy Spirit to if the Holy Spirit were nationalized, it'd be Italian, because you just got to go with it. You can't control Italians. You can't control the Holy Spirit. You've got to just kind of, you can fight it and you'll be miserable, or you can just sort of settle in and say, okay, take me. Bishop Barron calls it, are you involved in the ego drama or the theodrama? And I love that characterization. And, one is going to lead to misery and pain, and the other is going to be scary, but oh, what a ride,
Yeah, man, I haven't heard that comparison before. The ego drama or the theodrama?
Yeah, I mean, some of his talks, and I read his daily reflections, and that's sort of I think a theme of Bishop Barron is that we're all caught up in our own egos and our own ego drama, and that certainly applies to those 3 years of discernment, where it's protectionism, and self motivated thought, and just again, because you're growing in faith and you consider yourself a faithful person, you're far from the trappings of the world and of your own ego, right?
It's crazy, because so did Peter. He thought he was faith-filled. He thought he was totally on board.
I love me some Peter. He's
Well, I've been thinking about that lately. I think Kevin and I mentioned it the last episode, and I hope to kind of still dive into it, but just that idea of why is it so hard to believe what we believe? We believe it, and again, it's not even a doubt thing. We're sold out to it. We're giving up to Jesus, but at the same time, it's really hard to believe what we believe. I do believe it, and I'd go to death for it. But if you talk to me in the moment, it's I don't know. I'm still scared to take a jump, and it might take me 3 years to pray about it. And
well, that's why I love the Old Testament so much, Nick. I mean, because I just identify, it's oh boy, that's just me. No matter how much God does for me, I'm still complaining. Oh, the food, the manna, I don't like it. It's just always something. And, I can't look and see all that God has done so often. Instead, it's oh, there's not enough drink over here. You just parted the Red Sea, and yet I'm still complaining over on this side of the pond, And
we claim to believe in a God that spoke the universe, and all quarks and neutrinos and the laws of physics, and he spoke all that. That's our claim. And then we're worried about, oh, what if this doesn't work out? I don't know. I just think, that you're right.
Well, and I think we kind of lived the Exodus, if I could just say, this total testimony to God and his goodness. And that, when the pandemic started, Nick, I mean, we faced an insurmountable hurdle. I mean, in 8 weeks, we canceled 40,000 people. I mean, I don't even have the human resource. I mean, that took 3 years to build. I mean, we're kind of on a 2 to 3 year cycle for organizing groups and events and conferences. And so that took staggered, labor over years to build. And in 6 to 8 weeks, it's just all has to be torn down, physically take the phone calls. But from a financial perspective, it's a wonderful life. I mean, you have everybody wanting full refund. Well, as being a good steward of your deposit, I have used it to make deposits on buses and hotels and millions of dollars across the world. And do you think that not one hotel is open, not one restaurant is open? Nothing. They're not going to send the money back, let alone answer the phone. What do you do? And it seemed like truly we were against the Red Sea, and the Egyptians are coming. And I remember I wrote in my journal, in March of 2020, I don't see any way for this to end well. I mean, there's just no human way. And yet God so threaded the needle. And I tell Kristen and my wife all the time, I said, if I didn't believe in God, I would absolutely have to believe now, because I know we're on the other side. I just don't know how I got there. It wasn't by, good looks, charm, or brilliance, if that's for sure. It's just by God's good grace.
Well, you're good looking.
Yeah.
I don't know what the other one.
Oh, stop.
That's crazy.
Yeah, isn't God good?
Yes.
But the point is, even after all that, it's still the least little frustration comes up today, and you're gosh, really, do I have to face that little annoyance? then that's just
What
us, our
what
humanity.
in your own personal, well, as much as you're comfortable, in your own like personal daily life, what are the things that you what are the things well I'll caveat. Okay. I'll precursor. For me, lately I watched an episode of the Catholic talk show, which I didn't know existed till last week, and that's all me. They're really great. All their episodes are wonderful. I'm really impressed. They're like 10 times better than old-fashioned Catholics, so that's cool. But they had an episode on the Liturgy of the Hours, and for Jason and I, we started to do the morning prayer back in, gosh, it would have been 2007, 2008, when we were not Catholic, but we were interested, and we were going to Father Mike's, at the Newman Center in the morning for Holy Hour. And Jason would go in and do morning prayer and Holy Hour, and I would go to sleep on Father's couch because I didn't care about any of it. And over time, I incorporated morning prayer into my life. Just actually, it started when she went to med school. She was lamenting that she wouldn't have time to do that anymore, and I was like, well, why don't I do it for you, like in place of, because we're one flesh. Let me do, I'm on a Caribbean island with no job, let me do morning prayer for you in the Caribbean Sea. And so I did that every day, but then it became like a necessity for me. Like it's not a good day for me if I skip morning prayer. And then so recently I watched this episode by them, and I was just kind of bowled over by the reality that the Catechism even talks about. It is the official prayer of the church. So if the Mass is like the tip of an iceberg, then all the rest of it is the Liturgy of the Hours, is the breviary, is that the entirety of the church, all the priests and all the sisters and all the laity who do it, they're all praying the same thing every day in this massive force of prayer. So for me lately, I found, to fight the anxiety and to fight all the confusion of the huge question mark that we're facing, I have just incorporated all the 5 prayers of the day into my life through podcast and through reminders on my phone. And it is sustaining me. It's the rebar in concrete for me. But I know that in everybody's life, everybody has different stages of life that they're in. Some are able to contemplate, some are able to do the Ignatian steps regularly. So for you in your life through the pandemic, but even daily now, what are the things that you've incorporated that structure you, that carry you, that are the rebar in that life of the Spirit? What would those things be for you, if you're up for talking about them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right now I'm so busy, it's the snooze when my prayer reminders come up. But
yeah,
I do the same thing. I have.
We don't talk about that.
All right. Sorry. Yeah. So for me, I do the my morning prayer routine is intercessory prayer and the daily readings, and then gospel reflection with Bishop Aaron. Try to do a rosary every day. I try to do it with either one of the kids or Kristen if we go for a walk, or I'll take the rosary and like visit each of the kids and say, hey, do a decade with me, or do a couple decades. Tonight, my wife, my oldest son, and I prayed the rosary together on the way to my daughter's tennis match. So I try to incorporate the kids. I feel like
that's cool,
and
that's
the
great.
family somehow, to go up. And as a dad, I think I don't know if you find this, Nick, but that during the heat of the day, everybody, we're moving, we're going, we're and if there's any kind of subject that comes up where you disagree at whatever level, it's like this. And I learned early on to kind of like, okay, I'm not going to engage now. Doesn't mean I'm going to let it go. In fact, often I'll say, well, let's talk about this later. And then I find at night, though, it's like everybody the heart is more supple or more open. I don't know if it's just this diurnal rhythm. I don't know what it is, but you go in at night and, you're kind of getting tired. And from the time the kids were the youngest, that's when we could address things. That's when we could talk. That's when we could pray. That's when guards were down. So that is an important part, I think, of my daily routine, is to engage with the kids, in some form or fashion. And I just finished Exodus 90. I've done it for the last 4 years with
no way
during the days before Lent and after Lent. And again, that wasn't any coincidence. I mean, I think not exactly what you'd call an ascetic person. So the fact that God called me to start that the year before the pandemic in 19, why am I drawn to this? This is not, I'm not Siddhartha. This is not my thing normally. So why am I drawn to this? And I really think that first of all, the men and the good friends and those bonds of going through it with these men these last 4 years has been incredible. I don't know if I could have gotten through it without even their physical help and prayers. So sometimes, though, at the end of Exodus, I'm off the rails a bit, and it's like, oh, alcohol, cake, where can I get everything I want? And so it's been a little harder to sustain the prayer, to the length that I need and want. So I got to get back on track.
So just in all honesty, I love that Exodus 90 exists. I like that. But I don't, I get it, but I don't get it. Like,
really?
I understand. I get
Nick, your whole life is Exodus 90. You're going to mission work.
Maybe a component is there's a bunch of deprivation every day. I'm so tired. It's like, don't take another thing.
Yeah.
Please. I just Kettle One. I need, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just also, it's probably coming. I think Exodus 90 is coming for me. A, what got you started the first year? And B, 4 years in a row. How the hell? I got to be honest. Like, wow. How do you do it?
Yeah.
Do you stick with it?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
all right.
Do we cheat? We certainly bend a rule here or there. But we're pretty, we hold each other accountable, and I don't know, it's been the greatest blessing. It really has. And it actually, it's like anything, Nick, if you're called to do it, it's easy. It's easy. It might not be the right word, but I know what you mean. It doesn't feel cumbersome. It doesn't feel onerous. That's why I like your witness is like, because I obviously don't have the grace to go to Cambodia and do what you do. So to me, it's like, oh my gosh. But don't you think,
it's weird. John got cut off, and I'm not sure what happened. We had technical issues. I told him. Good night, everybody.
I'm here.
All right, hey. Well, actually, okay. So I do have a question. I actually wanted to clarify. I was talking to Father Mike the other day, and I would be remiss. I want to try to put it on all of the media that I'm a part of. It is not as hard for Jason and I to do this as it would be for other people.
You're getting the grace.
Yes, there is an internal called. This is what I wanted in the first place. So I'm finally getting my way. There's a bit of that where I feel like I didn't want to be here ever. So to finally get to go, it's not, it's different. So again, that's to what you're called to. That goes back to Exodus 90. I haven't been called to it yet. I know if and when I am, I will. And it's the same. Like, I hope, people understand, you and I have very different callings, John, but our callings, well, actually it's summed up. It's easily summed up. If you delight yourself in the Lord, he will give you the desires of your heart. And Amen. Because things are in the correct order, the hierarchy of desire is put in the right order. If your delight is in him, if you're just trying to be with him and love him, your dreams come true in the way they should. Your heart is fulfilled. The desires you have. I don't have a desire to be here. I never did. This has been a cross since 2014 to be back stateside. It's been very good.
It's because you haven't been to Michigan, though.
Well,
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true. Not in the summer.
Right. Okay. True. I haven't seen Mackinac Island. My grandpa has talked about Mackinac Island and all that area a lot in my life. I've just never been. I'm excited. But it's neat to hear you say that, because I look at you and I'm like, well, actually, your whole calling in life is astounding. Couldn't bear it. But then even that you would do P90X, you're going to do Exodus 90.
That's my wife.
Which is worse. That's crazy. That's a great way to put it, though. If you're called to it, then it's the right thing.
You have the grace. It's funny. We had a good priest friend of ours over for dinner last night, and he would razz me like crazy, like Exodus 90, and it would just, and it's so funny. Like, I thought, he's never going to do this. He did it this year, and we talked about it. He's like, oh my gosh, what a blessing, what a grace. And I'm like, Told you, Father.
Really?
And yeah, it was funny because we were at the Legato Summit the first year I did it. It was in California. This particular year was in California in 2019. I was with a good buddy of mine, and he's throwing back beers. And, you try to kind of be a little bit, under the radar about it. You're not like,
Yeah.
I'm doing Exodus 90,
Yeah,
first
yeah.
of all, what the heck is that anyway? And so I'm trying to kind of be under the radar. And it's like, I like threw it out there a little bit. And then he was like, wait, what is this? And then I gave him a little more. He's like, man. You're like, no way. No, he's just, there's absolutely no way. He wanted to do it the following year again, just like he got the calling. I mean, he is so far beyond me. He is like, I'm trying to just like embrace it like he embraces it now.
You find yourself going, I wish I hadn't invited that guy.
Yeah, I
he's
know.
Shaming all of us. Yeah,
exactly. You gotta. It's like the way you started the show. It's put the bar very low. Surround yourself with people who are extraordinarily underachieving individuals, and you will shine. I think
welcome to Old Fashioned Catholics. This is going to suck.
Yep, that's right. So when it does, you can. If there's even one little bit of pearl of wisdom in this entire podcast, Nick, we will have far exceeded expectations.
Okay, two things. One, okay, so I warned you ahead of time. You have to make the toast. But before that, I did want to ask. So upcoming then in your life, for me and for anybody who watch, what would be something that you're a little daunted about that might be taking up a bit of your mental RAM and that you might be concerned about or be tempted to be anxious about? What's on the radar that's a little daunting?
Great question. So we've committed to a few bigger projects. We do an annual marriage cruise. We do an annual conference. It's a Good News brand, the Good News Conference, the Good News Cruise. And, whenever there's the ramp up for these, it's exhilarating, it's exciting, but just to stay focused on to prayerfully walk day by day, because there can be a lot. There's production, there's the hotel, there's speakers, there's a lot of dynamics at play, and to keep that purity of heart and intention, and to pray in advance for everybody who's going to be coming. So some of the bigger projects that we're doing and endeavors, they just have a certain inherent risk, but such a great reward in terms of the feedback and the way that I think God transforms lives through them. So, I guess that those that would be part of it. The other is just this sort of stilted way the world is coming back for most businesses. There's a lot of volatility. It affects all of us. My uncle, who's in manufacturing, he said, it was the exact word he used. He said, it's just very, very volatile. It's hard right now to project and to plan, I think with any business. So I care so much for our people, our team. Today we celebrated the 50th anniversary of our vice president, who's been with the company for 50 years. Wow. And, that's why my father-in-law was there, my brother-in-law who I own the company, my other brother-in-law who works with us. And it was a great celebration and just a great reminder of, all the things the company and the business have been through, and all of us, how amazing our team is, and how much we want to serve our team so that together we can serve those who God calls us to serve. I don't know if that really answers your question, but a lot of that can be daunting and can be difficult, especially if we rely on ourselves or think that it's up to us. And, the constant reminder that it's only God and His grace that gets us through.
Well, and again, that's the struggle with, I have a family of 7, so I have 6 people to worry about. You have more than that, and God put that on your shoulders. That's the phrase that Father Mike said. People often say, like, well, I don't want to be a burden. And to which Father Mike says, well, you are a burden, but you're a burden worth carrying. Like, if God puts that on your shoulders, that life that you have, John, then it's a burden. It's a different burden than most people will have to hold, but it's a burden worth carrying. And so I think if people are listening and pray for you, that would be for, wisdom and prudence and discernment for you then as their leader, because you're leading a whole ton of people and they follow you and you're good at it. So That's cool.
Well, I don't know about that. Depends on the hour and the moment, you know.
Yeah, true.
When God is coming through, it's probably great, and all the rest of the time, it's a stumbling.
Well, I know it's really, really late. It's what, almost 1 a.m. for you.
It is. I don't
Close.
know if it's time to wake up or go to bed. Really, I mean,
It's time to wake up, man.
Okay.
Because yeah. But you can, if you're ready for it, you want
I
to
am ready.
make the final toast and take us home.
I am going to toast to the Holy Spirit that it might lead each of us listening and watching this podcast to rest in our Lord, so that we can rest easy and know that He takes us by the hand every night. So, to the Holy Spirit, to Nick Jacelyn and your family and your travels, God bless you. And here's to you. Thank you for having me on.
Cheers.
Cheers.
If you want to tune into other episodes, they're on Old Fashioned Catholics at Nick Davidson's YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to John Hale for being on with us. And you guys have a good night.
Thanks, Nick.
Here, let's see.